of Educational Skills of Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. You will be invited to have your greetings and further to have your full speech. Thank you so much.
Salam alaikum, Minister Umarova, Minister Sharipov. It is such a pleasure to join you here for the 90th anniversary of the Institute of Pedagogical Skills, Abdullah Avloni. And it is such a pleasure because this is the place where the future of Uzbekistan will be designed. It will be teachers in the classroom who will prepare the next generation for the future. And Uzbekistan school today will be Uzbekistan's economy, Uzbekistan's society tomorrow. So once again, it's a great privilege and pleasure to join you on this important day. Let me also congratulate Uzbekistan for the progress that it has achieved. When I was here 3 years ago, Uzbekistan was a different country. Many of the buildings that I can see now did not exist, but more importantly, the attention that is paid to education as the future of the country was not as much in focus as it is today. The country has successfully implemented its first global assessment of PISA in a highly professional way, but more importantly, it has very quickly turned those data into action, into a plan for powerful action, and my congratulations for putting teachers at the center of this action plan. Thank you.
Hurmatli janob Shlyayxer, sizga qimmatli fikrlaringiz uchun hamda konferensiyada ishtirok etish maqsadida O'zbekistonga tashrif buyurganingiz uchun katta rahmat. Jalb qilib kelayotgan ta'lim tizimlarini o'zaro solishtirish va ta'lim sifatini baholashga qaratilgan loyihalarni joriy etishda iqtisodiy hamkorlik va taraqqiyot tashkilotining o'rni beqiyosdir. Bugungi tadbirda ta'lim hamjamiyati uchun fikrlar va takliflarni ulashish maqsadida ta'lim sifatini yaxshilash uchun uni baholashning ahamiyati to'g'risida so'zni tadbirimiz mehmoni hurmatli Andreas Shlyayxerga bersak. Marhamat.
Thank you so much for giving me the floor again, and I hope I can see my presentation. If you can just load my presentation. And I wanted to share a few of the results from the PISA assessment which Uzbekistan completed successfully, and also discuss some of their implications with you for teachers. The pandemic has disrupted our ways of thinking about education and posed some fundamental challenges for education, also in Uzbekistan, and the future will always surprise us. Climate change will disrupt our lives a lot more than the pandemic, and artificial intelligence puts to the test many of the assumptions that we have made about education. The kind of things that are easy to teach, easy to test, have also become easy to digitize, to automate today. This world no longer rewards people just for what they know. No. ChatGPT knows everything. This world rewards people increasingly for what they can do with what they know. Not do they learn for jobs, but do they learn to create tomorrow's jobs? How do they prepare for technologies that have not been invented? How do they prepare to solve social problems we cannot yet imagine? Artificial intelligence will put many things to the test. Artificial intelligence will never replace teachers because learning is always a social, a relational experience, not a transactional business. But teachers who are good in using artificial intelligence, embrace new technologies, new pedagogies, may well replace teachers who struggle with this transition. And there's so many other disruptors that we need to include when we think about the future of education. None of us here in this room knows how the future will look in 20 years, in 30 years. But that's the time span that we must think about when we think about young children in primary school. We need to think about the future, and the best way we can do that is to imagine different versions of the future. If we do not know exactly what will happen, let's think about different scenarios, different possibilities, and the better we become at imagining different versions of the future, the better we will be prepared for the future that eventually arises. What is very clear is what we expect from education, that on the one hand, it will create a more sustainable world, enabling young people to keep this world in a better balance than we were able to do, to make better trade-offs between the present and the future. But at the same time also enabling young people to live in a world that is in imbalance, that is developing very fast, where every day you wake up in a new context. That resilience needs to be another really, really important feature of tomorrow as well. The capacity of students to develop agency, the capacity to mobilize their cognitive, social, emotional resources to do things in this world. And that's exactly what our PISA assessments try to look at. And the last assessment was done in 22, the first time Uzbekistan joined the assessment. So let me talk a bit about the global picture that emerges from this. When you think about, what do you expect from a modern school? I think the first thing is something we can probably easily agree. You expect school that it helps young people to find out why they are here on this planet, what is important to them. What contribution do they want to make to this world? Very important role in school to inspire young people to make a difference in this world. And second, also quite obvious, to give them the knowledge and skills to help them find their talents. Find their talents, nourish the talents. Very important role, and at the same time also help young people understand what the world expects from them, what the world needs from them. What makes us happy usually is the difference we make to other people, to our societies, our communities. And I think school can be a very, very important, catalyst in this. And ultimately, also, help us translate better skills into better jobs and better lives. So if that is, what we expect from education, how well do education systems meet those ambitions? Well, let me start with a brief picture from Uzbekistan. What you can see very clearly is that there are strengths and there are challenges. One clear challenge is the short yellow bar, the level of problem-solving skills, the level of creative skills, the level of, the capacity of students to think like a mathematician, to think like a science, to engage with complex text. The kind of things that we test in PISA, there is still a long way that Uzbekistan needs to advance in this. Uzbekistan students have learned a lot of content in mathematics, but when we test it, can they think like a mathematician? Can they imagine how to translate real-world problems into the world of mathematics? Many students struggle with this. In science, many students from Uzbekistan could remember the result of scientific experiment, but when we asked them to design a scientific experiment, many students struggle. But you can see also many strengths. You can see, for example, the orange bar is longer than on average across OECD countries. Actually, generally, students in Uzbekistan demonstrate a high level of emotional well-being. They know who they are. They are happy students in general. They showed a good level of emotional resilience. They understand and know how to cope with difficulties. So there are some really important strengths in the system that must not get lost in the transformation. Let me give you a contrast when you actually compare Uzbekistan with Estonia. It's almost a mirror image. The yellow bar in Estonia is very low. Estonian students are very, very strong on the academic side. They have very strong knowledge and skills. They're great problem solvers, good creative thinkers. But you can see the orange bar is quite short. Estonian students are not so happy. They don't show as much agency as we can see among Uzbek students. When you look at the two countries, you may ask yourself, well, maybe we have to make a choice. Either the students are happy, like in Uzbekistan, and then they lose out academically, or we focus very much on academic skills and pressure on students, and then they end up to be unhappy. And that's unfortunately a choice that is posed in many education systems. But it is a false choice. If you look, for example, at a country like Denmark, and there are many others as well, where you can actually see, sorry, my clicker doesn't work. Yeah, sorry. When you look at Denmark, for example, you can see they're good and quite good on everything. They're strong in their academic skills. They're happy children. Danish students display a good level of agency. They can mobilize their cognitive, social, emotional resources, a good level of emotional resilience, strong quality of social relationships. They're always open to different ways of thinking, different perspectives, different ideas. So we can reconcile different objectives of education, ensuring that students have very strong academic capabilities and at the same time also can, think for themselves and can work with others and can live with people who are different from them. That's really what we can and need to expect from school, and what the PISA results show us is an achievable goal. And I will, point out why the quality of teachers is so important to this. Unfortunately, I cannot move the slides. One of the biggest challenges that we see from the PISA results is actually the challenge of students to think creatively. One aspect that we put particularly emphasis on, students in Uzbekistan are often good in reproducing what they have learned. The teachers teach them something and the students can remember it well and actually also demonstrate that knowledge in a test. But when we gave them problems where the answer was not that clear, where they had to generate creative answers, where they had to assess the originality of their thinking, students in Uzbekistan were not familiar with those kinds of tasks. But those kinds of tasks will be increasingly important in our societies, our economy. In a way, we have to educate young people to think in a way that nobody else has thought. That is what makes us different from the artificial intelligence we have created in our computers. So how can we do that? Well, the first thought that we often have is, money. And you can see there is a relationship between the money that is spent per student on the horizontal axis and the quality of learning outcomes you can see on the vertical axis. And particularly for countries on the left side, like Uzbekistan, money can make a huge difference. The line between learning outcomes and investment is very, very steep. So the best thing Uzbekistan and countries similar to that can do to invest. But when you go to the right side, look at the United States, there you can't see much of a relationship between investment and outcomes. Now you can see, for example, the United States spends 10 times as much as Vietnam and doesn't have better results. So money only gets you so far. And you can see, yes, Uzbekistan, with more money could achieve better, but again, you can see a country like Vietnam that with similar investments achieves better results. Mongolia is also a very successful example of a country that has still very limited resources in education, but mobilizes those resources very effectively. So, yes, money is important, but money is only the first step. The quality of education is more than just the resources that are invested. And you can say the same when you look at the time that students spend learning. In blue, you can see the hours students spend learning in school, and in green, the hours that students spend learning out of school, homework, tutoring, things like that. And you can see vast differences across countries. Now, you can see, for example, a country like Morocco has 50 hours teaching per week or learning. And then you compare that with Switzerland at the other extreme, and you can see Switzerland spends less than 30 hours now. Huge differences in the volume of learning time. And in Uzbekistan also, it's a country that actually puts quite in a high number of hours of learning for students. But when you look at productivity, the picture is very different. You can see in Switzerland, students learn a lot with very little time. In Morocco, students spend a lot of time and learn very little. So it's not about expanding the volume of learning time. It's really about changing the quality of instruction, improving the productivity in education. And that really is about the quality of teaching. It's not the quantity of hours. It's the quality of the instructional environment that drives that productivity and that it allows us to achieve good results with limited resources. That's really the most fundamental challenge, and unfortunately I cannot. And you can see also from the data where there is a shortage of qualified teachers, results are poorer. Where there is a shortage of, in support personnel, the results are lower. Where there is a shortage of material resources, instructional resources, digital resources. And you can see all of those are limiting our possibilities in education. Quality of education resources is critically important. Let me talk a little bit about digitalization. Now you can see quite important differences across countries in the time that students spend using digital devices. For learning, that's the blue part, and for leisure, using your own smartphone, that's the green part. Uzbekistan is somewhere in the middle. You have a country like Ukraine at the extreme, but that's not by choice. Many schools are closed because of the war, so students need to resort to digitalization. But many countries using more technology, many countries using less technology. Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And the answer to this is not so clear. Let me show you one picture on that. When you actually see how technology use, the intensity of technology use on the horizontal axis plays out against results, you can see when teachers use technology for instruction, doing a little bit of that can lead to improved outcomes. Technology can amplify, accelerate good educational practice, make learning more personal, make learning more interactive, produce powerful learning analytics that help teachers understand how different students learn. It's a great potential in technology. But you can see when technology becomes the dominant factor in the classroom, results actually deteriorate. So it's about finding the right balance. The best technology in education is sometimes present but not visible. It's not the smartphone in the hand of the student. It's really the technology being used for learning analytics. So we need to, explore the use of technologies in a very conscious way. But I also want to show you something else, actually. When you look at the use of personal smartphones, we only see negative outcomes now. Smartphones have come into the way of productive learning. They distract students from the classroom. And you can see this is not just about, mathematics results. You can see, students are also less happy with their lives. They have poorer control over their emotion. They are more, less stress resistant. So finding the right solutions, the right balance, and once again it comes back to the teachers in the classroom, where teachers make intentional use of technology, to enhance instruction. Technology can become a very powerful, inspiration and force for improvement. But where technology is used in, idiosyncratic ways, students doing social media, playing with their smartphone, you can see it's not only academically a problem, but it works against many other factors. And this problem arrives at the doorsteps of teachers. Teachers in the classroom need to manage this. It's the reality. Technology is the reality of the 21st century. Teachers need to cope with this. Teachers need to get into the way. So let's come to teachers in a more explicit way. Now, one of the challenges that our data show for Uzbekistan is that many students feel, I have a good instructor, my teacher takes care that I'm taught, but I don't have a good coach. I don't have a good mentor. I don't have a good, someone who understands who I am, who I want to become, who supports me in my learning. The quality of support that young people perceive is not as strong as, for example, at the other extreme where you can see In the case of Vietnam, where 9 out of 10 students say, yes, when I need help my teacher, I can rely on my teacher to support me. There's a very strong relationship between students and teachers, and this is one of the ingredients that PISA shows for student success. And that's something that Uzbekistan can still work on to ensure that learning is not just transactional, not just instruction, but that teachers take personal responsibility for the success of every kind of students in the classroom. And this is why you can see where teachers, where students feel supported. You can see very clearly that they are less worried. When they say, students think that the teachers at my school are friendly towards me, are respectful for me. If I came back to visit my school 3 years from now, my teacher would be excited to see me. Where students have that perception of their teacher, you can see they are less worried about the results in mathematics, the performance in mathematics. Sometimes we think if students get worried about mathematics, we should make it easier for students. That's the wrong answer. Actually, having a demanding work environment for students is something that creates that growth mindset. The aspiration of young people is very important, but at the same time, students need to feel that if they face difficulties, their teacher is their friend, their coach, their mentor, their facilitator, a creative designer of innovative learning environments. That's one of the important kind of lessons from the PISA assessment, the quality of the social relationships. I show you something even more interesting about teachers, where you can see where teachers help students. The students are more likely to pay attention, more likely to ask questions. One of the observations that we made about Uzbekistan is that many students do not ask questions. They know the answers, but when they are challenged, they're not probed, they're not asking questions. And in the times of ChatGPT, the world doesn't reward us for answers, for memorizing answers. The world rewards us for posing the right question, not for reproducing the established wisdom of our times, but for questioning it. And you can see very clearly, when the students feel the support of teachers, they pay more attention to when their teacher is speaking. They put more effort into their assignments for mathematics class. They make time to learning the class material. The perception that my teacher cares about me is one of the most powerful predictors for students' engagement in learning, for students taking it serious, for paying attention, for asking questions. And that is what the modern pedagogy is about. So it's not so difficult to achieve. It's really about, ensuring that students feel that their teacher is there for them. And we can see the same thing, very interesting, also in this chart. You can see very clearly is that the quality of student-teacher relationship was one of the best predictor for students' capacity to learn independently. What the pandemic has shown us that the moment learning gets disrupted, it's your capacity to set your own learning goals, to manage your own learning processes that are so important. In today's economy, yes, you can get a good qualification early in your life, but the test is, will you continue to expand your horizon? Will you continue to upskill, reskill every day in your life? That's the test of truth, and we can see that capacity is very, very closely related to the quality of relationships between students and teachers. And of course, on the right side, you can see is also true for academic results. So this is why, teachers are not just there to, convey as instructors, but they have very, very important roles beyond that. You can click once more. And again, this is a picture from the years of the pandemic. We could see on the one hand, teachers made tremendous effort to provide students with access to resources when schools were closed, to provide video lessons, to provide instruction material. There was a lot of activity of teachers to help students. But when it comes to the social, the relational aspects, the bars get much shorter. I show you, one thing at the end. During the pandemic, we asked students, how many times did your teacher ask you, how are you? And you can see only 13 per student had a teacher who they felt regularly cared for them. So you can say, yes, teachers did a lot to provide material resources, all of that. But that simple question, how are you? I care for you, was actually very, very limited. And that's an aspect that in these times is incredibly important, increasingly important in the times in which we live. The same is true for parents. What our data show very clearly is where parents care for the academic development of their students, or even just for the social development of their students. You can see results are consistently better. No? The proactive mathematics behavior, the kind of mathematics learning that you want to foster, where students are curious, interested, active in expanding their horizon in mathematics. That proactive behavior was much more developed among students who felt their parents were interested in their schooling. I can give you one number for Uzbekistan. The fact that, parents asked their children every day, how was school, had a bigger impact than parental income on the success of students. You don't need a degree as a parent. You don't need to spend 3 hours on homework with your children. But just showing your children what they do matters to you is important. And once again, the teacher is the gateway to this. The parental engagement usually comes through the teachers who establish that relationship with the parents and so on, who care for that. So that's really very, very important. We could also see that students were much more diligent in checking their homework when they felt their parents were interested in this. It was not about the parents doing the homework with them. It was about parents caring for them, talking about their future in education, talking to them just socially. So there's a lot that we can do in education working on this together. We could see also, when we look at the future of education, sorry, I want one more back. If I can go back, yeah. We ask students, what makes them happy in their life? And you think that when you are 15-year-olds, that when we assess students, the last place on earth that makes you happy is your school. No? But the data show the opposite. No? The most important predictor for students' happiness is their family, of course. But the second most important predictor is the school. That's something that we need to take to heart, that school is a very important and powerful place for young people at the age of 15-year-olds. And therefore, schools have an important responsibility to create an environment where young people can find out who they are and who they want to become. And we see very clearly that, developing the right learning strategies can be a very effective way, if you can click once more, a very effective way to develop student self-efficacy. You can see that when students try to connect new material with things they had already learned, something that teachers, good pedagogy can facilitate, they were much more confident in their mathematical ability. When they could control their learning, asking the right questions, having the courage to expose something in school, checking their homework, making sure there are no mistakes, managing your learning strategies, a very powerful predictor for self-efficacy. Again, things that teachers can facilitate in their classroom. Critical thinking, creative thinking. Where teachers foster creative thinking, critical thinking, students are much more likely to actually show a confidence and activity in mathematics. Cognitive activation, something that we often miss in Uzbek classrooms. Teachers put a lot of emphasis with a lot of content, but sometimes you achieve better results teaching fewer things in greater depths, ensuring that your students are active, that they are challenged, that you look at their thinking skills, not just at the results. And you can see, again, a powerful predictor for learning strategies. And last but not least, problem-solving strategies. Again, a powerful predictor for student self-efficacy. And it's not just about, self-efficacy and school results. You can see the next slide shows the same relationship with students knowing about their future, having clearer ideas of who they want to become, what kind of jobs do they want to pursue. The most important decisions about your career you do not make when you graduate from school. The most important decisions about your career you make when you start school. That's when your teacher helps you to see your future. That's when you make your investment in your skills. Then that's when you decide, am I going to take school seriously? Am I going to develop a passion? You can see very, very clearly that the development of effective learning strategies through the teacher is a very powerful predictor for students, having that clarity, having that, intrinsic motivation, not just instrumental motivation. So you can really see how teachers are the gateways to the future of young people as well. And last but not least, we can see very clearly where teachers had taught young people the right learning strategies. Young people were much less worried about facing difficulties in school, much less anxious, particularly girls. When they had access, when they knew how to learn, when they had control over this, when they had faced a high level of cognitive activation, they were not worried even if they faced problems they couldn't solve. They developed that kind of growth mindset that is so important in this world. And developing a growth mindset is one of the most powerful predictors for achieving a better education system. Now you can see again, when you look at a country like Estonia, on the right side, the success of Estonia is that every young person believes, the sky is the limit to my success. If I study hard, I know my teacher will support me, and I'm going to be successful. I will not be afraid of any difficulty I face. In the case of Uzbekistan, there are too many young people who still believe that success is about the intelligence I was born with. There's nothing I can do about it. So building more of that growth mindset, access to the right learning strategies, powerful pedagogies will actually be the tool to raise, the aspirations of young people and the success of young people, much more than money and time alone can have. I mean, that's really the most powerful lesson that we take from the PISA assessment. If I bring this to conclusions, there are things that you can do easily and things that are very hard to do. And I'm actually very impressed by the action plan that Uzbekistan has, put into place. Because it is not only looking at the easy things, it's also tackling some of the things that are really important and hard to do. So let me put a second axis into this. And this is basically, moving from what is not, sorry, if you can click once more, from what is less important to what has more of an impact. When we develop education policies, we want to start with the things that are easy to do and really important, obviously. We want to avoid things that are hard to do and not so important. Sometimes you can pick up low-hanging fruits, things that are easy to do, maybe not so important, but it's also really, really critical to move into areas that are hard to do, but really, really important for Uzbekistan's future. When I try to fill this chart, I can look at some, and if you can just click through because this is too slow. If you can just fill all of this. You can basically, one of the things that we can do quite easily is to better anticipate the skills that will be needed in tomorrow's economy, tomorrow's society. Now, once again, if you teach primary school students, you need to have an image of the future in 20, 30 years' time. Developing the curriculum, Uzbekistan is well on its way of that. It's very, very important. Having a clear plan of what students should be learning at what age. Focusing on the depths rather than on the breadth, teaching fewer things in greater depths, building powerful instructional systems. All of those things can be done quickly and are really, really important. But I want to come to the yellow upper part. And this is where, your work is very much focused. It's about building leadership capacity in the system at every level. School leaders who are, people who can motivate, build powerful teams of teachers. Teacher training, of course, in some parts it can happen in universities, but much of a teacher training needs to be teacher learning every day in the classroom from their colleagues, building professional learning communities, building a collaborative culture. That depends really on strong leadership. Building capacity. Once again, the quality of education can never exceed the quality of its teachers. Aligning resources with needs, ensuring that, the most powerful teachers, the most effective teachers, teach those students with the greatest needs, aligning resources with needs, and then fostering a work organizations that enhances professional capacity, professional autonomy in a collaborative culture. The agenda is not easy, but I must say again, I'm very impressed by what Uzbekistan is doing, putting a plan, a roadmap into place to actually build the foundations for tomorrow's education by attracting, developing, and retaining the best people that can make this happen, the teachers of tomorrow. Thank you very much.